Yeah, hey, this is Gunner. I went into Medford and I seen a lot of aerosol geoengineering going on. So I recorded some of the trails. It was layered. They were old trails on top of new trails. And then I went to Grants Pass and the cloud disbursement expanded from those trails, and then the condensation accumulated into the cloud cover you see here. Yeah, visit geoengineering.org, and there's a great film on there called The Dimming. It'll give you an overview of what's going on. And Tucker Carlson interviewed the founder of the geoengineering website just about a week ago, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. also interviewed Dane Wigington about a year ago at the end of his presidential campaign. So a lot's happening. Get informed and join us. Contact me if you're interested in learning more or being a part of the movement.
Perhaps the greatest lie ever perpetrated on populations all over the world is the condensation trail lie. What we're seeing in our skies is not condensation. It's sprayed particulate dispersions with very few exceptions.
They shouldn't be there. Jet engines burn clean. So if there's anything coming out of them, it's an additive.
They're absolutely not contrails. Contrails do not linger, dissipate, and go into cloud coverage, period, in the report.
And I kept saying to people, what is this? Because now the sky is no longer blue, it's starting to turn gray. And what I found was kind of like it was not socially acceptable. We're all going to pretend this is not really happening. And I thought, oh, this is very bad.
Most are unfamiliar with a science term called global dimming. That term refers to the amount of direct sunlight that no longer reaches the surface of the planet due to light-scattering particles that are building up in the atmosphere. And although many of these particles are from industrialized pollution, the larger majority are from the ongoing climate engineering solar radiation management operations. This engine, a high bypass turbofan jet engine, this is the engine that is on all military tankers and all commercial carriers, is in essence a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through this engine is non-combusted. This engine, by design, is nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail except under rare and extreme circumstances. And again, we have film footage of aircraft flying at altitude with nozzles visible, turning on and off. That is the end of the argument.
It's always the obvious questions that are so vigorously discouraged. And one of the questions that's been the most discouraged over the past 30 years are, what are those lines in the sky that you see trailing jets? What is that? Some people call them chemtrails, claim that somehow the U.S. government is spraying poison on the population. Those people are clearly crazy. Wikipedia calls them crazy. Every news outlet calls them crazy. But the trails are still there. And it's clearly not water vapor, because that doesn't make sense at all. So what are they? We've spent the last 6 months trying to find someone credible who could explain that to us. A serious, sane person with an engineering background who could tell us, what are we looking at? Because we're looking at something. And I don't care what names you call me. I still want to know what it is. And we think we have found that person. Dane Wigington of Northern California has been on this subject for almost 30 years and has compiled what we believe, after looking at it pretty carefully, is the most comprehensive account of what we're seeing. And it's very bad.
Bottom line is, when we have up-close film footage of these aircraft at altitude, KC-10s, KC-135s, C-17 Globemasters, with nozzles visible turning dispersions on and off. This is not, quote, condensation. Geoengineeringwatch.org is the only entity that has taken a NOAA flying lab, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab, top scientists in it, to sample what these heavy aircraft are emitting at altitude. That sample was processed at Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York, one of the world's most renowned testing institutions. We found exactly what we knew we would find, starting with aluminum nanoparticles. Bioavailable freeform aluminum is toxic to all life, period. That element is named in numerous climate engineering patents as part of a geoengineering dispersion element. So again, there's no theory involved in any of this. And we use the science terms at geoengineeringwatch.org because the chemtrails term is the instant marginalization term by design. You bring that term up, any elected official won't talk to you anymore. Media will immediately marginalize you. Solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, cloud albedo enhancement, climate engineering. If we stick to the science terms, they can't marginalize us. So again, this elephant in the sky that we're told is a conspiracy theory is exactly what the entire global climate science community says we need to deploy immediately to slow down the warming of the planet. Stated purpose to deflect some of the sun's incoming thermal energy. We know these programs, not surprisingly, are making a bad situation worse, not better. And Tucker, they're being used as a form of warfare to manipulate atmospheric pressure zones. This is undisputed, patented science. So why would we think they're not using these type of operations? We have historical precedent. Project Popeye in Vietnam was so successful at controlling precipitation. This is a historical record that by 1976, they passed the INMOD treaties forbidding weather manipulation for wartime purposes, but not over a country's own population. So if we look at the
Can I ask you to stop? I'm sorry. You're throwing.
Please.
I'm so ignorant on this topic, but I'm suddenly very interested that I just want to make sure we don't miss anything. Operation Popeye, is that what you called it in Vietnam?
Correct.
What?
Correct.
I've never even heard of that. I'm embarrassed to say. What is it? What was it?
Very easily researched historical record. U.S. military was so successful at controlling precipitation over Vietnam that the international community was very concerned about this, at least on the surface. And they passed environmental modification treaties in 1976, international treaties forbidding weather manipulation in wartime. So again, when people claim this is conspiracy, we don't have this kind of power and control, and they try to muddy the climate engineering issue as being the localized, publicized cloud seeding operations. Those are two completely different animals. And we see even some state legislators doing the same. And we're trying to correct that at geoengineering.org because we're working with numerous state legislators now and have been. There's legislation pending in 36 states to ban geoengineering over their skies. Tennessee and Florida have already done so. But we're correcting them and giving them an accurate compass heading that the localized, publicized cloud seeding operations, the kind which they tried to implicate in the Texas floods that killed so many young Americans, as being connected to a localized cloud seeding operation, which is virtually meaningless in comparison to climate engineering. It's an ant compared to an elephant. So intentionally, those that control media and are trying to control the narrative are trying to confuse these two issues. They are completely different. They're trying to mask or hide the elephant in the sky, which is climate engineering operations. And again, these are patented processes. For listeners that have heard of HARP in Alaska, I'm not sure if you ever heard of that, Tucker, HARP.
No.
Okay, that's images of that exist. There's no dispute as to its function or what the patents outline that it can do. Even Discovery Channel did a long episode, which they've seemed to be taken off the air now, called Controlling the Weather. But that's a weapon of mass destruction. They play it off as a benign research facility. That's an ionosphere heater. It transmits 3.6 million watts of power to the electrically charged ionosphere, causing an electrical chain reaction. They're literally using the atmosphere as a physics lab, which we know they do, right, Tucker? You know of Project Starfish Prime and Project Fishbowl, if you've heard of those. Those are the U.S. military's experiments with detonating hydrogen bombs in the magnetosphere, which they thought could collapse the whole atmosphere. Did that stop them? No, it didn't. So installations like HARP are used to control atmospheric pressure zones back to the hurricanes. If you can manipulate atmospheric pressure zones with these directional ionosphere heaters, you can literally manipulate their path. And is that what we see going on? Is that a demonstration to others right now? Does the administration want to not have a big hurricane cataclysm since they've gutted all the emergency protection, everything? Do they not want to fight that battle too right now? We don't know. We can speculate on those things. But the fact that there is nothing that we can call natural at this point is indisputable.
a couple different threads. One, the U.S. military in this country, our military runs propaganda operations against our population, and they do it on social media. And of course, they do it through the conventional media as well, and they have for a long time. But it's certainly gotten more aggressive. So that's illegal. It's immoral. Anyone who participates in that should be in prison. But it happens, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to stop it. So we know that they lie to our population about a whole bunch of things, including what they're doing. Two, we know that in the past 15 years, you see these kind of fat, effeminate generals all of a sudden talking about how climate change is like one of the main national security threats, and like the purpose of the U.S. military is to fight climate change. There's been a lot of that, and it's very confusing to people like me who think of the purpose of the U.S. military as like shooting people trying to invade our country. Like, what does climate change have to do with national security? But they've been saying that a lot. And your description suddenly makes it all make sense. Like, a lot of what they do is trying to mitigate, or saying they're trying to mitigate, the effects of climate change. I mean, I guess this is more out in the open than I realized until right now.
I would call it masking the effects, because they're certainly not mitigating it. Everything they do, every short-term toxic surface cool down comes at the cost of a worsened overall warming and damage to the planet. And you're completely correct, Tucker, completely correct in the U.S. military top brass statements on the record that they consider the collapsing climate system the greatest national security threat of all. So when you have so many military bases at sea level, some of which are already being inundated, that's a part of the problem. But you have other elements, for example, and this is from a perspective of the existence of the human race and how much longer we're going to be here. The ozone layer is near functional collapse right now. It's not the hairspray cannons. Single greatest damaging factor is climate engineering, period. Not just the oxidizing particles that are being dispersed in our atmosphere, but the manipulation of those particles with extremely powerful frequency transmissions. So we know that of all the towers being put up everywhere for, quote, communications, fake trees and, all the different forms they come in, we know that many of those installations are being supplied with 10 times more power than they need. That's part of my background in the electrical field. I know people that work on these towers. 10 times more power than they need for communications. Why do they need that much more power? 1,000% more power. And we know these facilities are being used to manipulate the electrically conductive atmospheric particulates. There's a repelling effect caused from these transmissions, because we can see the effect on water vapor loops. So if we look at the flash flooding in Texas as an example that killed so many young Americans, we captured in real time, and I'm still surprised we have access to these data loops, because we have access to the transmissions from the NextRad network that are used to manipulate weather systems. And what happened in that case was, because of the repelling effect of those transmissions, and picture this scenario, when there was that convective cell over that location and transmitters energized all around that cell, and we recorded that, it's posted online. That, in effect, held that cell in one place. It precipitated out in one location. We can speculate about agendas and objectives. We can't know that. But the fact that that storm was manipulated is beyond dispute. Same with Hurricane Helene. We recorded that in real time. The frequency transmissions manipulating that storm and steering it into place. It's indisputable. These are patented technologies. Hurricane Harvey, we recorded that. How did meteorologists know 7 days in advance that Hurricane Harvey was going to go where it went and sit there for 3 days? How could they possibly know that? Frequency transmissions held it there. We recorded that in real time. And again, these people are reading scripts, Tucker. They're literally reading scripts passed down to them by Raytheon, private defense contractors Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, that are neck deep in climate engineering, everything, patents, operations, everything. And they literally supply and provide the, quote, forecast, which is the scheduled weather, to the National Weather Service and NOAA, our nation's weathermen. That passes all the way down. And local meteorologists simply, they know how long their leash is. They're protecting their paychecks and pensions. They toe the line as well, just like the safe and effective in the medical community. Everybody just toes the line because they don't want to disrupt their personal paradigm. These storms are being steered and manipulated, period. That's beyond dispute.
I'm glad you keep bringing up the COVID vax, because it would be hard for my middle-aged brain to accept a lie at this scale? Like, how could you do that? How could you hide something this big, this profound from an entire population? Except I just saw it 5 years ago with the COVID vax, which was like a total lie. And now there's no dispute about the fact that they lied about it, but no one was ever punished and most people believed it. So I know for a fact what you're describing is possible. Can you, but actually before I forget, let me ask so who pays you to do this? Like this is quite an operation that you're running. You're clearly, I guess, not in it for the money. Like this is a bigger movement than I was aware until right now. So you're running lab tests on rainwater. You're researching this actively. Like, is this a volunteer effort? How and why are you doing this?
Because I could find no greater point for existing. How can I possibly look the other way? I was restoring habitat in Northern California, east side of Lake Shasta, habitat that was decimated by irresponsible logging practices. I wanted to do that the rest of my life. I wanted to plant trees and watch them grow the rest of my life.
Good for God bless you.
I mean, there's no greater solitude than what I was doing. But how was I to continue doing that, knowing what I knew? When the solar output reduction happened that I mentioned earlier, and I began to test rain, knowing the implications of toxic rain that contained aluminum. By the way, aluminum in regard to not just killing soil microbiome, but tree root systems. This is peer-reviewed study. Since that bioavailable aluminum, they shut down nutrient uptake. So the trees die a slow, protracted death, and all official agencies blame beetles. The trees are dying because of the beetles. That's all we hear. And the bottom line is, beetles are a symptom of a sick, dead, dying tree. My father was an arborist. I know trees. I love trees. When I was in kindergarten, they had to come out after recess and drag me out of the tree because I didn't want to come down.
Yeah, and I feel the same way.
I can't look myself in the mirror. I can't look my children in the eyes. How could I not do this? And if we carry this further, Tucker, you know the bees are collapsing, right?
Oh, of course. I know very well.
So we know this year we were told 70% collapse this year. That's staggering. That's incredibly alarming. But what's the real figure? The real figure is that's a 70% collapse of the 20% that was remaining. We're down to single-digit percentages of pollinators left right now. We know insect populations have declined. This is terrestrial and aquatic insect, 80 to 90% globally.
It's very noticeable. And if you don't believe it, remember the windshield on your parents' station wagon as a child in the summertime was covered in bugs. And that is not... I drive in a rural area every night and no bugs. That's real.
No bugs, no people. Also, we publicized this in 2012 with my work with former government scientists that could speak out because they were retired. And the science community tried to marginalize us. And now they've had to admit to it. If your listeners search insect apocalypse, they'll find the alarms going off all over the globe because this translates to plankton as well. No plankton, no people. We have peer-reviewed science study now from the Atlantic. Plankton population is down 90%, 90. Other oceans not far behind. That's the greatest oxygen producer on the planet. That is the base of life on Earth, plankton. We are on the human race right now, Tucker. I've used this example before, but it sends a message that's very accurate. It's like occupants of a car parked on the railroad track. The train is seconds from impact, lights flashing, horn blaring, and they're trying to decide what station to put the radio on. I mean, no matter what other issue we're facing, and I would argue power structure maneuvering right now from conflict zones to carnage zones, many other factors are directly related to the unfolding and accelerating biosphere collapse, which climate engineering is fueling, not mitigating. It's fueling it, and they will not let go of this covert weapon of control. It is the crown jewel weapon with which they can, have been, and are bringing populations to their knees, including our own, without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault. They're not going to let go of this weapon. In regard to our military brothers and sisters that are participating in this, because many ask that question, why would they? But the bottom line is, and I've heard you say, I just heard you cite this, and I thank you for doing so, that our military brothers and sisters took an oath to protect their populations. I heard this on a former presentation you just made, to protect their populations from all threats, foreign and domestic. So they're being compartmentalized, and they're being told that these programs are some benevolent, necessary operation. Just like the pilots in Vietnam, I'm sure were told when they were spraying Agent Orange on everybody, they're not told this is going to kill your comrade on the ground. Of course they're not told that. So here we are.